What's the one creepiest thing that has ever happened in your life? When I was a kid, I had a recurring nightmare. In it, police cars and ambulances would be parked at the end of my street because a psycho killer was on the loose, attacking people nearby. Every time the dream came, the killer seemed to get closer to my house. The last time I had it, I must have been around 13. I woke up in the dream, but I was still asleep, and saw a man in a terrifying clown mask standing over my bed. He darted into my little sister's room. Moments later, I heard her scream. That scream wasn't in my dream. I jolted awake to find her actually screaming in real life. I ran to her room. She was wide awake, sobbing in bed, trembling, and whispered that she had had a nightmare. A man in a scary clown mask had come into her room and started stabbing her. After that night, I never had the dream again. Even 20 years later, thinking about it still makes my skin crawl. A few clarifications, since some people have questioned the story's authenticity. My sister was about 3 at the time and still in a toddler bed. I never asked her about the dream that night because she was so frightened. My only concern was calming her down. We lived in a split-level house, with our rooms upstairs and our mom's room downstairs. Until that final dream, I had never seen the clown-masked figure. Previous dreams were always just about the killer getting closer to our house. While it's possible she could have heard me talk about those earlier dreams to our mom, there's no way she could have known about the clown figure. I only saw him that one time. There's roughly a 10-year age gap between my sister and me. We weren't extremely close growing up, though we were still sisters who cared about each other. As adults, we've grown closer and often communicate silently through facial expressions, handy for quietly making fun of someone in the room. As far as I know, she didn't continue having similar nightmares after that night. Years later, when I asked her about it, she had no memory of the incident at all. I was really young, maybe 5 or 6, so my memory is a little hazy. My family was on vacation in Massachusetts. We normally lived in upstate New York. That day, we ended up at a street fair. I remember chomping on a candy apple, begging my dad for some stuffed animal, and even stopping by a friend of my parents' apartment for a short visit. Nothing creepy happened there, at least not yet. On the way back to where we were staying, we took some kind of public transportation, probably a bus. I had a window seat and was staring outside when I saw something that stopped me cold. A kid walking past who looked exactly like me. Same haircut, same everything. On impulse, I cracked the window and shouted, "Hey!" The kid froze, looked up, and his face went wide with shock, almost like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. I could tell he noticed the uncanny resemblance too. But just like that, the bus moved on, and I never saw him again. I'm adopted, and ever since that day, I've wondered, did I just catch a glimpse of a long-lost brother or relative? I may never know, but that moment has haunted me for years. One night, I was watching Blair Witch Project. As soon as the movie ended, I glanced to my right, toward the sliding glass doors that looked out into nothing but woods, and froze. Pressed against the glass was a girl's face, staring in at me. My heart immediately started pounding, and I swear it took me a good 30 minutes to calm down, until I realized it was just my brother's idiot friend messing around. Still, for a moment there, I was completely terrified. When I was 18, I had a job where I worked with this older man, probably about 40 years my senior. From the start, he always acted off around me, though I couldn't quite put my finger on why. One day, I tossed an old lipstick I no longer used. Later that evening, he pulled out his wallet, and something fell out of his pocket. My lipstick. The one I had thrown away earlier that day. That moment sent a chill straight down my spine. I still can't shake how creepy it felt. I lived in Pennsylvania until just shy of my 12th birthday. I remember that date because you had to be 12 to hunt there, which I was excited about. We moved to Florida, and hunting was allowed there too, so that was fine. I had a few friends who lived down the street. We were out in the country. My address was literally 169 and a half redacted road. We'd hang out at my buddy's house or hike up a hill about half a mile to a small, basic cabin with a burn pile at the top. No electricity, no lights, an outhouse, just a fort for Nerf battles, manhunt, and capture the flag. One night, my friend invited some cousins over for marshmallows and manhunt. About 13 kids started, dwindling to 10 by nightfall. We played 5 versus 5 in the dark. I was with 2 fast friends, but we realized only 3 of us were left on our team, and we hadn't captured anyone. My friend F got lost trying a jailbreak, leaving me and L alone. At one point, while chasing someone, I ran behind L to surprise an opponent, but there was no one there. No trees, no scarecrow, nothing. Later, when we asked the other team who had been hiding behind our lines, no one claimed it. It was unsettling, but we shrugged it off as someone messing with us. Back at the cabin, we roasted marshmallows and ate hot dogs around a fire. Suddenly, we saw someone coming up the hill. At least 4 of us saw it, but after half an hour, no one arrived. When we went to investigate, we found no one on the path down the hill. Then, someone appeared out of the woods directly above us, scaring everyone. Later, on the far side of the clearing, another figure vanished into the trees the moment we tried to illuminate it with flashlights. 6 kids decided to retreat to my friend's house at the bottom of the hill. 4 of us stayed behind to investigate. We suspected it was L's uncle, but as we walked into the woods, we heard a low rumble, a noise that sounded almost inhuman. Flashlights revealed nothing. After searching for half an hour, someone appeared halfway behind a tree, watching us. Even L and I, just feet away, didn't want to shine our flashlights on it. We circled wide and made it back to the cabin, grabbed F and C, and ran to L's house. On the way, we heard the cabin door slam. Once at L's house, we debated calling 911, but no adults were home. L's grandfather had a heart attack hours earlier. At 4 a.m., we heard a sound from upstairs, even though L's house had no upstairs. A completely black silhouette jumped from the roof, sprinting away faster than we could follow. It paused at a nearby creek, let out the same eerie rumble, and leapt across before disappearing into the woods. The next day, L's parents told us the cabin was being torn down. A cow had been killed and dismembered there overnight, either by a wild animal or something else entirely. Whatever it was, we never went back up that hill at night. To 11-year-old me, that night redefined fear. It was 2 a.m. this past July. My 1-year-old woke up screaming, not unusual, but intense. I went in to console her, offered a bottle, but nothing worked. She'd been having night terrors lately, waking up terrified for no apparent reason. My wife took over trying to calm her, but she was inconsolable. By 2:30, I decided a car ride might help. We loaded the screaming baby into my wife's Yaris and drove out of the garage. I planned a long, quiet drive, about 30 minutes into the country, to settle her down. The roads were empty at this hour, perfect for a peaceful drive. Once out of town, I took a long stretch of deserted road and hung a right onto a smaller, 45 mph road. After about a mile, something caught my attention. Ditches filled with water ran on either side of the road, about 3 feet deep, and ahead, traffic cones completely blocked the road. No signs, no warnings, no lights. Just cones. My heart sank. I expected something bad, maybe a robbery or some prank. My wife and I exchanged nervous glances as I realized I'd have to make a quick 3-point U-turn. As I slowed to turn, I saw it, or at least I think I did. Headlights caught a silhouette across the ditch on the left side of the road. A person just standing there, watching. My wife hadn't noticed because she was scanning the road behind us. As soon as the car was straightened, I floored it. Well, as much as a Yaris can, and we got the hell out of there, heading straight back home. Back home, we carried the now sleeping baby to her room and noticed something odd. Her closet door was open. We usually keep it closed at night. I can't explain why it was open. I checked the other doors and discovered the front door wasn't locked either. Had we forgotten? Did it even matter? The baby's crying, the open doors, the silhouette in the ditch, it all left me on edge. I spent the rest of the night in the living room, sitting in a chair with the TV on, clutching the thick end of a 2-piece pool cue, unable to shake the feeling that something had been watching us. When my daughter was 2, she started talking about a man who lived in her closet. She said he would come out at night to wake her up and talk to her. According to her, he lived in a hole in the closet and would take children down it. She described him as having completely black eyes. At first, I tried to shrug it off. I don't believe in the paranormal, but she was terrifyingly consistent. The situation came to a head one night when I woke to her screaming at the top of her lungs. I ran across the house to her room. Between sobs, she told me that the man with the black eye said her mother, was dead and asked if she would come down the hole with him. He apparently insisted that she had to say yes so he could take her. She said no. Whatever happened next, I could never get her to explain, made her scream even harder. When I got to her room, the closet door was wide open. I always shut it at night because of her nightmares. That alone sent a shiver down my spine. After that night, I moved her into my room and didn't let her go back to hers. We ended up moving out of that house a month later, and she continued sleeping with me. She never mentioned him again. I even reached out to several paranormal investigative groups. Though I never followed up on their responses, she stopped talking about it. Whether it was real or just in her imagination, it remains the single creepiest experience of my life. She's 7 now, and she still remembers him. About 10 years ago, I was living in a university town, waiting for the bus downtown. A younger guy came up, and we started chatting casually. Out of nowhere, he put his hand on my shoulder. "Hey," he said earnestly. "Do you work for the government?" Something shifted. At first, he looked like any other college student, just another face in the crowd, but when I looked into his eyes, there was something off. I laughed nervously. "Well, indirectly. I work for the university." He nodded, completely serious. "That's true. That's absolutely true." He gripped my shoulder tighter. "You should work for the government." I lightly slapped his hand off my shoulder. Dang, I think I'm actually waiting for the wrong bus. I better get going. Bye. I made it all the way across the street before he shouted after me. "Hey." He waved both hands over his head like he was sending me off on an ocean liner in a newsreel. "You've got a bright future ahead of you. I can tell." Back when I waited tables, a few of us would hit up a nearby pizza place for beers and pizza after our shift ended. My buddy Jeff never wanted to come along. He said the manager of the pizza place creeped him out. We always joked that it was just because the guy had fired Jeff a few years earlier, but Jeff insisted it wasn't about that. He just had a bad feeling. A couple of years later, that same manager made national news, busted for kidnapping 2 boys, one of whom he had held in his apartment for over 4 years. Jeff had been right all along. The man, Michael Devlin, is now serving 74 life sentences. I used to work at a grocery store, and about once a week this dancing kid would shop there. He always wore black khakis, a white shirt with a black tie, a baseball cap, black Ray-Bans, and a light blue surgical mask, like he thought he was Michael Jackson. One day, a coworker and I were joking about what he might do outside the store after he moonwalked past us all the way to the peanut butter. He was easily 50 feet away at the other end of the aisle when I turned to my coworker and said, "Dude, that kid is weird." Suddenly, he did a perfect 180, looked straight at me, pointed down like he was firing a gun, swished his ponytail, and danced off to the next aisle. Creepy and completely unsolved. Back in college, I had a roommate I met just a week before moving in through a posting on one of the school boards. Our families even helped us move in, lifting bedroom furniture up the stairs to our side of a twin house. We had our own bedrooms, and we were kind of an odd pair. She was messy, with clothes and books everywhere. I kept my space simple. About a month in, she started complaining about trouble sleeping. Something, or someone, was keeping her awake. She also had a few unexplained bruises and scratches on her back. No boyfriend, no sports, no risky behavior. We were both nerds, studying or watching movies. Then one night, I came home from the library around 11 p.m. She was in her room, watching a movie. I said goodnight and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up at 7 a.m. for class. Walking past her room, I noticed her door was open. I glanced inside, and the entire room was empty. She was gone. No note. No explanation. I called the cops. They didn't believe me, even after I showed them rent checks and her parents' info. Her cell phone was disconnected. Her parents couldn't be reached. I asked around campus. No record of her ever being there. I still have no idea how she could have moved all her belongings out between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. without waking me. I'm a light sleeper, and there was no one else in the house to help her. I moved out a week later. Edit. Since this got attention, here's more context. One of my classmates later moved into the same twin with 2 friends. About a month later, my classmate told me that her roommate, who slept in the same room as my old roommate, packed up and left suddenly, warning her never to ask why. She also complained of poor sleep and mysterious bruises and scratches. Believe it or not, it's the creepiest and most unexplainable thing I've ever experienced. Not sure what happened here, but it still creeps me out. My family and I went to the lake one day, and my dad accidentally dropped his cell phone into the water. The next day, he got a new phone with a new number. I was sitting next to him while he was working on his laptop when he said, That's weird, my old number is calling me. He answered it, and a confused look spread across his face. He put it on speaker so I could hear too, and all we heard was a loud, gargled sound, like someone breathing heavily into the phone. It went on for about a minute before we just hung up. Totally buried memory, but here goes. My husband, Matt, and I had just moved to a new state. We hardly knew anyone. No family, no friends, nothing. A few months in, he had to fly back to our old state for work. Alone in our apartment around 11 p.m., the doorbell rang. Who could it be? We lived on the top floor, so I peeked out the hallway window that looked down onto the front porch. A man stood there. "Can I help you?" I called down. He looked up at me. "Is Matt home?" I froze. I didn't want this stranger to know my husband was out of town. "You're a friend of Matt's?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "He called me and told me to come over," the man said. "Impossible. Matt was across the country." "Okay, what's your name?" The man glanced at his phone, hesitated, then said, "John." I grabbed my cell and called Matt, explaining the situation frantically. "There's a man here. Do you know a John?" Matt had no idea who he was or why he was at our door. I yelled down to him, "Do I need to call the police? Matt doesn't know you. Leave." He froze, nervous, then slowly backed away and finally left for good. Even now, I can't stop thinking about it. How did he know my husband's name? One night, my boyfriend came home looking kind of freaked out. He said there were weird noises coming from the backyard. Curious and stupid, I grabbed a flashlight and went out to check. At first, it was just a low, repeating hiss, nothing too scary. I started walking toward the tree line to see what kind of animal was making it. Then, out of nowhere, the hissing turned into a low, gurgling scream from about 10 feet away. It sounded eerily like those brute monsters from Amnesia. I screamed, bolted back to the door, and yelled, "Get inside, get inside. This is some Stephen King shit." I still think it was probably some animals fighting, but at the time, I was 100% convinced that A, monsters were real, and B, I was about to get dragged into the woods and eaten. I was driving in Boston at 5 a.m. after a long, grueling drive home from Georgia. I had already dropped off a few people, and it was just me and a buddy left in the car, heading to his place. We stopped at a light not far from his house, waiting for the green. Up to that point, we hadn't seen a single soul. It was cold, empty, and quiet. Then, out of nowhere, a rough-looking woman stepped into the crosswalk in front of us. When she reached the front of my Pontiac Montana, she stopped, almost touching the car, turned to make eye contact with both of us, smiled, and then laughed maniacally for a good 10 seconds. It was incredibly strange. Nothing about her seemed normal, and the memory of that laugh still gives me chills. I used to lifeguard in high school, and during the summer we'd host camps for adults and kids with special needs. I was warned about one camper in particular, a guy named Bruce. Everyone who had interacted with him had a wild story to tell afterward. One day, while I was lifeguarding, a middle-aged man with a thick, Ron Swanson-style mustache came up and started chatting with me. I casually glanced at my coworker across the pool, and they were frozen, eyes wide, mouthing a single word, "Bruce." Realizing who I was talking to, I tried to mentally prepare myself for whatever might come next. The conversation went on, and somehow we ended up talking about the 4th of July. He mentioned he usually goes to his parents' house to watch fireworks, and I said, "Oh, that sounds nice." Then he put his hand on my shoulder and said, dead serious, "Yeah. If you ever mess with me or my family, I'll kill you, send you through my wood chipper, and fertilize my yard with your remains." And just like that, I nodded, smiled, and silently wondered if lifeguarding had just turned into a survival course. 1988, when my daughter was around 2, we moved into a 4-bedroom house, new to us, but old enough to feel lived in. My wife and I took bedroom number 1, and our daughter got number 2. Not long after moving in, we noticed something strange. After we put her to bed, we'd hear her talking and laughing long past the time she should have been asleep. Curious, we peeked in after a few nights and found her standing at the end of her crib, chattering away at the closet door about 5 feet away. Typical new parents, we'd tell her to lie down and go to sleep. But the strange part was that she wasn't just babbling, she was having conversations. Talk a little, listen, answer yes or no or I don't know. When we asked who she was talking to, she said, matter-of-factly, "The lady in the green dress." This continued sporadically for a while. When we asked what they talked about, she'd shrug, "Stuff," or "school," or "I don't know." Time passed, and her little brother was born. After the initial baby in our room phase, we moved them into the same room. When he started pulling himself up, the same thing happened. We'd hear him babbling, peek in, and find him standing at the end of the crib, talking to the closet while his sister slept peacefully in her bed. Years went by. 2 boys later, the eldest got his own room, and the 2 youngest shared a bedroom. The youngest continued the same behavior. We had no way of knowing if the kids discussed the lady in the green dress among themselves, but each described her in detail. One might say she had long hair, another said black hair, but when asked specifics, they'd always agree on the same details. We figured it might just be a storybook memory, but the coincidences stacked up. Then the weird stuff escalated. Both my wife and I smoked. The rule was one could smoke outside or in the upstairs bathroom, which had a vent fan. One cold evening, too cold to go outside, I smoked in the bathroom after putting the youngest to bed. The older 2 were downstairs watching a movie. Suddenly, I heard them yelling the youngest's name and running in circles through the house. Kitchen to dining room, dining to hallway, hallway to living room to kitchen. "Why are you running?" I asked. "We're chasing him. He's supposed to be in bed." I peeked in. The youngest was asleep. They were seeing someone on the stairs, just glimpses of a figure, and chasing it, convinced it was him. Another time, I was home alone in the study downstairs. Someone was pacing above me, the slow, deliberate sound of footsteps across the living room floor. Thinking it was my sister-in-law, I checked, doors locked, nobody there. My wife later confirmed she had heard the same thing once when homesick, footsteps pacing the living room, but no one ever there. We started calling it the walking man. He didn't answer, didn't interact, just existed. No more green lady conversations, no more phantom kids running around. The walking man remained a quiet, unexplained presence. Years later, in 2000, we moved to a bigger house. Most things were packed and in storage, so the house looked empty. Late one night, our oldest son got up to use the bathroom. From the living room, down the hall, he saw a tall man standing, staring at the wall, back to him. He knew instantly it wasn't me. The figure slowly turned toward him. He ran back to his room, only to see a woman sitting on the floor with a small child in her lap. Both were staring at him. He screamed and bolted into our room. We checked the house. Nobody was there. We even set up a camera for a few nights, but caught nothing. We moved, and that was it. Except, we realized something afterward. Walking into a house alone, you feel it. The emptiness, the quiet, the fact that you're the first person home. In our old house, we never felt that sense of being truly alone. It was as if the house had always been shared with unseen residents. We never knew who, or what, was there. We don't know if it was connected to the green lady, the walking man, or something else entirely. But we all felt it, and maybe that's enough. I'll do my best to recall this, though it happened when I was just a kid, maybe 12 or 13. I lived in a 2-flat apartment building. My grandparents on the bottom floor, and my uncle, who owned the building, upstairs. I was a tough kid, not easily scared, and I didn't believe in anything paranormal until this night. It was the night of my uncle's wake, and I was getting ready to leave. While combing my hair in the bathroom, I heard a voice call my name. Instinctively, I responded with a yes, but there was no answer. I finished getting ready and shrugged it off, thinking nothing of it. Until I remembered where I was going. I woke up in the middle of the night while staying at a friend's house. Her dog, Pi, was whining insistently at the front door. Rubbing my eyes, I got up from the couch, thinking I'd shoo away whatever animal had the dog so worked up. I opened the front door and froze. There was a man standing there, just staring at me, smiling. I screamed. He smiled wider. Pi went berserk. I slammed the door so hard it probably woke the entire neighborhood. And that, without a doubt, was the creepiest thing I've ever experienced. I went on my first road trip with my best friend right after we graduated high school. We were 18, headed to Oregon, and decided to take a break on some random road that followed a river. There was no one around for miles. Turnouts appeared every 100 yards or so, probably for fishing. We got out of the car and spent over an hour wandering along the river, skipping rocks, just enjoying the quiet. Eventually, we rounded a bend and reached a small bridge, out of sight of our car. When we decided to head back, we chose to walk along the road. That's when we saw it, an old pickup truck parked right behind our car. My stomach sank. There were plenty of empty spots for miles. Why here? My mind immediately went to worst-case scenarios, thanks to an older sibling obsessed with true crime. Realizing we were two 18-year-old girls alone on a deserted road, I suggested we quietly get back into the car and leave. I slid into the driver's seat, my friend in the passenger seat looking toward the river. Our car had been giving us trouble, so when I tried to start it, it screeched loudly, a common issue. I laughed nervously, thinking our stealthy escape was already failing. Then my friend screamed, "Oh my God, he's naked. Go, go, go. Let's get the fuck out of here." I turned just in time to see a naked man running straight from the riverbank toward us. My heart nearly stopped. Thankfully, the car roared to life, and I floored it. I could see him running after us for a short distance before he disappeared behind a bend. We laughed at first, relief mixing with adrenaline. But the more we thought about what that man might have been capable of, the more terrified we became. That day, I learned to always trust my instincts, and I haven't forgotten it since. Mine's a different kind of creepy. To get to my old college, I'd take the tram to the closest stop, then walk up a long, tree-lined pathway. In the winter mornings, it was always dark and quiet. I usually arrived around 8:45 to get to class by 9. One morning, I overslept. By the time I reached the pathway, it was an hour and a half later than usual. Police tape blocked the entrance, and a white forensic tent was set up. I later learned that a girl had been raped there around 8:30 that morning. I spent the entire day on edge, thinking about how close I had been, how different things could have been if I hadn't overslept. A friend and I accidentally farted at the exact same time, same length, nearly the same pitch. We just stared at each other in stunned silence. From that moment on, it was forever remembered as the day we were perfectly in sync. When I was 16, my friend's uncle, about 10 years older than us, started following me everywhere. He'd show up at our school, sometimes even at my house. Somehow, he got my phone number and would call at all hours of the night. He frequently told my friend that he thought I was cute and wanted to date me. This went on for nearly 2 years. Finally, one night, he called again, and my mom, the most fearless and badass person I know, put him firmly in his place. I was apparently the source of creepy even at 3 years old. I had an imaginary friend, an old man I called the Cuckoo Man. When my mom asked who I was playing with, I told her his name was Gross Vader and that he used Dad's tools in the basement to make cuckoo clocks. After a few weeks, my mom realized something chilling. Her grandfather, who had died in Germany before I was born, had actually made cuckoo clocks. Gross Vader is German for grandfather. Later that year, I was telling my cousin about my amazing friend. She looked at me and said, "The Cuckoo Man visits your house too?" A friend of mine had a really intense fear of gas masks, so extreme that he joked it might be because he'd been a World War I soldier in a past life. One day, we were hanging out at my house. He was happily playing his PSP, completely relaxed. Then another friend found an old gas mask my younger brother had bought at a flea market. Thinking it'd be funny, he walked in screaming with the mask on. The moment my friend saw it, he started hyperventilating. His eyes went wide, staring off like he was seeing something 1,000 miles away. I've tried looking for others with a similar fear, but I've never found anyone, or even a name for this particular phobia. Karen Wetterhahn was a chemistry professor at Dartmouth, working with an organic mercury compound that was relatively unknown at the time. One day, a single drop spilled onto her gloved hand. Normally, that wouldn't have been a big deal, but dimethylmercury penetrates latex gloves almost instantly. That tiny exposure would prove fatal. About 6 months later, she slipped into a coma and eventually died. The most disturbing part is how her coma was described. One of her former students said it was not the kind of coma I'd expected. She was thrashing about. Her husband saw tears rolling down her face. I asked if she was in pain. The doctor said it didn't appear that her brain could even register pain. It's a haunting reminder of how something so small and seemingly harmless can have devastating consequences. I found out someone had been hiding in my house for 2 hours while I thought I was home alone. Thinking about what could have happened if I'd run into him still gives me chills. I'd come home from university for Easter and spent most of the day at my grandma's. My house was on a farm about 4 kilometers out of town, and like most farmhouses, I never locked the doors. After dinner, I went home, plopped on the couch, and tried to nap off all the shortbread I'd eaten. About 10 minutes in, a friend called. He was visiting town and wanted to hang out before his girlfriend got off work. We sat on the couch, catching up, then he left around 9 p.m. I cleaned up a bit, put my parents' puppy in her kennel, and stepped outside to the deck. That's when I noticed something wrong. The puppy, usually calm, was growling and hackles raised, staring through the stained glass window. My heart started racing. I saw a figure move across the kitchen. I couldn't make out details, but I knew it was a person, not a ghost. Instinct kicked in. I ran to my car and waited for my girlfriend to pick me up. As she pulled in, I jumped in, explaining what I'd seen. At first, she thought I was imagining things, maybe a ghost. Understandable. Our house is pre-World War I. Then we both saw him, peeking out from behind the blinds of the bay window, staring at us as we drove away. I'll never forget that look. I convinced her to turn around and call my neighbors. Armed with guns and bats, we searched the house top to bottom. He was gone. Miraculously, nothing had been touched. I still don't know where he hid, but for 2 hours, he was inside while I'd been lying on the couch. The scariest part? I could have walked into him at any moment, upstairs, downstairs, anywhere. That thought still makes my skin crawl. You know how some memories or habits become so natural that you barely notice them? Well, I remembered something much creepier than my last story, but this one happened to my mother, not me. It's a combination of her personal account and what I've pieced together from news reports. This happened in 2003. My mother worked as a clerk at a hospital in an upscale part of Madrid. Her job involved moving patients, delivering X-ray results, and other daily tasks. One ordinary day, she heard screaming from a floor below. Being the type to rush to help, she immediately assumed someone was having a stroke and ran toward the sound. When she got there, the hallway was empty, except for a man lying on the floor. She stepped forward to help him, but that's when she saw a doctor running straight at her, holding a bloody knife. The doctor attacked immediately. My mother raised her forearm instinctively, taking a deep cut from elbow to wrist, an ugly scar that remains to this day. Terrified, she ran down multiple flights of stairs as the doctor pursued her relentlessly. It took the efforts of a male nurse and another clerk to finally restrain the assailant. My mother always remembers one rescuer by name, Salvador, which fittingly means savior in Spanish. She was treated for her injuries, though she complains to this day that her wedding ring was lost when nurses removed it to stitch her arm. The man she found on the floor was already dead, and there were 2 more victims, one of them another doctor. One of the most harrowing stories from the trial came from a fellow clerk who hid in a bathtub to escape. The killer found her and stabbed her repeatedly, leaving her severely crippled physically and psychologically. She survived only because the doctor believed she was already dead. The murderer, Noelia Domingo, suffered from schizophrenia. She had long displayed disturbing behavior, including a persecution complex, believing her co-workers were conspiring against her. She had stopped taking her medication. On that day, she arrived at work with a kitchen knife, and the tragedy unfolded. Her bizarre behavior had been widely known, but she was never removed from duty because of family ties to the hospital management. Colleagues later testified to her strange habits, such as writing on a computer while it was powered off. Watching the boyfriend of one of the murdered doctors speak at the trial was heartbreaking. He explained that everyone had noticed Noelia's disturbing actions, but nothing had been done to prevent the tragedy. My parents initially tried to shield me from the news, but it didn't last long. When we turned on the TV, it was everywhere. Noelia Domingo is now confined to the psychiatric wing of a prison in eastern Spain. She has occasionally been allowed temporary releases, sometimes traveling hundreds of kilometers to Madrid on her own. It's a chilling story, and the thought that this could have happened in an ordinary hospital day makes it even worse. I used to work at Dollar General, and one early morning I was helping an older gentleman find the shampoo aisle. He tried to make small talk while I was busy running the register, but I figured I'd be polite and chat with him until someone came to check out. Then he asked where another item was, this one in the back of the store. Keep in mind it was early, and I was the only employee around. I walked him back and started looking for the product. We were standing shoulder to shoulder, and when I finally spotted it and pointed it out, he started rubbing my back while saying thank you. At first, it didn't bother me, but he kept going, continuing the small talk. I faked hearing a customer at the register just to get out of there. Later, when I rang him up, I still remember the awkward, confused look on his face as he left. Even now, thinking about it gives me the heebie-jeebies. Oh, and I should mention, I'm male. When I was around 11 or 12, I had an experience I still can't explain, other than maybe it being a ghost. One morning, I woke up for school and rolled over to face my doorway. My room was on the top floor, with a closet just to the left of the door, and right outside were the stairs leading downstairs. I watched, frozen, as a little boy, maybe younger than me, wearing a red backpack and blue jeans, slowly walked out of my closet, past my doorway, and down the stairs. He didn't look at me or acknowledge me in any way. He just moved as if he belonged there. I lay there for a minute or two, trying to process what I'd just seen. Eventually, I decided to go downstairs to tell my parents. Their bedroom had the bed in the middle, and my dad's favorite recliner tucked on the far side by the window. The chair was positioned so you couldn't see it until the door was fully open. As I opened the door to wake them and explain what I'd seen, the same little boy was sitting in my dad's chair, staring directly at me. I screamed and ran. Neither I nor my family had ever seen anything like it before, and no one has since. My parents still live in that house, which was built by my grandfather, and to my knowledge, no one has ever died there. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but that's the only explanation that makes sense. Freaky stuff. At the beginning of this year, I woke up in the middle of the night for no reason. When I glanced at the clock, it read 4:34 a.m. From the room next to mine, I heard my two younger brothers talking, and a few seconds later, the kitchen light flicked on. Our dad had also woken up and was heading toward the kitchen. Curious, my brothers and I followed him, and as we gathered there, we all said the same thing. We had just randomly woken up. At first, we laughed it off, thinking maybe some outside noise had stirred us. Then the phone rang. It was my aunt in Ireland. She called to tell us that my grandmother had just passed away. Later, I learned that her official time of death was 9:34 a.m. In Ireland, exactly 4:34 a.m. in our time zone. It was unsettling, yet somehow comforting, as if we had all felt her leaving at the same moment. I remember being a teenager and going for a drive with some friends. We decided to take a random rocky side road, just to kill time and chat. At one point, I noticed a mailbox with the name Callahan on it and pointed it out. Our math teacher was named Mr. Callahan, and we had a running joke about him being a little creepy, so we called him Diddler Callahan. We kept driving, and to our surprise, every mailbox on that street had the name Callahan. At first, we thought maybe it was some brand name for mailboxes, but they were all different, some handwritten, some with letter stickers. There were probably 10 or 15 houses, all with Callahan mailboxes. The whole street was dark, no streetlights, not a single light on in any of the houses. Suddenly, the road got bumpier and narrower and then just ended. Right in front of us was a broken-down house with a giant driveway full of speedboats and, of course, a Callahan mailbox. Unlike the other houses, there were lights on and a bonfire blazing in the backyard. We started to get nervous. My friend Storks tried to back out and turn around, but as soon as we started moving, a couple of huge, bushy-bearded men emerged from behind the lit-up house. They looked rough, like hillbillies, and intimidating. Storks quickly backed into a driveway to the left, but then more people started appearing from behind the main house, 10 guys and a couple of women, slowly moving toward our car. Storks got us going again, cautiously navigating the narrow, single-lane road lined with bushes and trees. Just as we thought we were safe, a massive pickup truck appeared coming the other way, high beams blinding us. Storks tried to pull aside to let it pass, but the truck stopped, and two enormous men got out, walking straight toward us. Storks floored it. We barely managed to get past the truck, scraping the car's side mirror in the process, but we got out. Whatever we stumbled onto that night, we never went back, and we still aren't sure what it was. I've had a few episodes of sleep paralysis. For anyone unfamiliar, it's when your mind wakes up before your body does. You're conscious, but completely unable to move. It often comes with visual or auditory hallucinations, and let me tell you, it's terrifying. The first time it happened was the absolute creepiest experience of my life. I had no idea this was even a thing, so I was utterly panicked. I woke up with a start from a nightmare, my eyes snapping open. At first, I felt a small sense of relief. I'd escaped the dream. That relief vanished the moment I tried to sit up. I couldn't move. My body was completely unresponsive. I was lying on my stomach, struggling to turn, but nothing worked. Panic set in. I tried to call out for help, but no sound came out. My scream was trapped inside my head, growing louder and more frantic with every attempt. It felt almost inhuman, like the kind of scream you hear in a horror movie when the gates of hell open, echoing with the voices of countless tormented souls. And then the shadows appeared. Dark shapes moving unnaturally around the room, darting closer with a sinister intelligence, like predators circling their prey. I don't know how long it lasted, felt like hours, but later I realized it was probably no more than a minute. As soon as I regained control, I bolted out of bed and immediately went online, desperate to understand what had just happened to me. When I was in middle school, I took piano lessons from a female teacher at her home. She was genuinely one of the kindest teachers I've ever had, never anything remotely creepy about her. One day, after my lesson ended, my mom was running late. The teacher offered me a donut from the kitchen. As she handed it to me, her family suddenly appeared and all entered the kitchen at once. I started eating, and then it hit me. They all formed a group and just stood there, facing me, smiling. Not a word was spoken. They just stood there, silently watching me eat the donut until I finished. I never told anyone about it. For years, I rationalized it. Maybe it was some kind of cultural custom, some gesture of respect toward a guest. But as I got older, I realized how strange it really was. The donut itself was fine. I didn't get sick. Nothing was wrong. But the memory of being silently observed by her entire family still makes me uneasy. A few years ago, my grandmother passed away from injuries that caused her to bleed out on the way to the hospital. Her home was very old, and the plaster ceiling collapsed, striking her on the head and knocking her down. As she fell, she hit her head again on the corner of the oven. I don't know if it was one blow or both that caused the fatal bleeding, but that's what ultimately ended her life. After her death, I went to help my father with the cleanup. She had been his mother, and he was devastated, not only by her sudden death, but also by the distance and infrequency of our visits. She lived about 5 hours away and had been a widow since 1988. I did a lot to assist him, including cleaning the blood from the kitchen. It was nothing like the movies. There was just so much everywhere. The town she lived in was tiny, maybe 700 people, and had no real hotels, so we stayed in her house. Her home sat on the corner of a small block, and directly across the street was a massive grain mill with 4 towering silos. Trucks carrying grain rumbled past constantly, shaking the whole house. Lying in that house that first night, looking up at the same ceiling that had collapsed on her, feeling the vibrations from the trucks, and thinking about the blood I had cleaned, the place felt incredibly eerie. My grandmother had been something of a shut-in, always at home whenever I visited, and now the house was empty, cold, quiet, and vacant. I had never been there without her, and now she would never return. I was really young, no older than 5, when it started. For nearly a year, every night I would limp into my parents' room and tell them that the man in the closet sat at the foot of my bed and spoke to me. The limp is important because it appeared at the same time this all began, and the man in the closet only had one leg. Doctors examined me countless times, but they could never find a reason for the limp. Adding to the unease, the street our house was on had a dark history. During the war, the entire area had been bombed, our house included, and rebuilt afterward. 2 houses on the street were never rebuilt, still standing empty as reminders. Just thinking about that street gives me the chills. I'm not a believer in the paranormal. In fact, I'm very skeptical, but whatever I experienced back then still freaks me out.